Smooth talker. Zeke stood a little taller, adopting his best imitation of his mother's regal bearing. He lowered his voice, as though sharing a secret with these guards. We both know Elias is waiting for outside help. If the difficulties could be resolved by the guards, you would have solved this already. Not to discount the valor of your men, Rook added from behind him. We've encountered many threats on the trail, but the town remains secure. That's an admirable accomplishment. The guards exchanged a nervous glance, and Zeke didn't give them a chance to collect themselves. What you're looking at is a team of seasoned adventurers from the city of Alinea. Adventurers who would love to help. From the city of Alinea? One of the guards shared a look with the other. Apologies. We hadn't expected you to arrive so quickly. One of the guards turned away, banging his spear a few times on the gate. The help from the capital has arrived. Open the gate. Zeke fought back a grin as guards retracted thick metal bars, letting them into the estate. He threw a look at Nightingale, and as they walked through the gates, she whispered, You got lucky. Just loud enough for him to hear. The Hyde estate was easily the largest structure in Hyde, though the gardens themselves seemed more practical than ornamental. The gray trees looked like they would give shade, and maybe bear some kind of fruit, but they weren't particularly nice to look at. There were no bars on the windows like there were in the Moretti estate. Instead, there was a wide set of double doors, big enough that the whole town might rush inside if they needed to. Mr. Hyde didn't expect you to arrive before hearing back from Alinea, the guard explained as they made their way to a side door. They were brought to a sparse but comfortable sitting room, though the tables were bare and there was no fire going in the hearth. So where the help that was sent for? Nightingale whispered, lifting a slim finger towards a balcony running around the top of the room. I guess we are. Zeke watched as the guards stirred into a frenzy of activity by their arrival. What's the plan? Remy interrupted in a low whisper. At this point, Zeke took a deep breath, we've got to run with it. We say Alinea sent us to help with whatever's happening. Little town like this, it can't be that hard. We help them through it, and they'll be sure to give us any information we need. The doors banged open, and two men came striding in. Elias Hyde? Zeke said as they approached the group. Indeed. The older-looking of the two wore dark, elegant clothing. A large scar ran down the right side of his face, leaving his eye cloudy and most likely sightless. His other eye was a brilliant red, and looked at them sharply. His legs ended not in feet but with hooves, a byproduct of the advancement, no doubt. Elias gestured for them to be seated, then sat himself. He looked worn despite his regal bearing. He was followed by another individual who straddled one of the stiff wooden seats the wrong way and never took his eyes off them. The younger man had a more muscular build and wore an open jacket in deep purple and black. It was hard to miss the resemblance between the two. His eyes were the same red as Elias's, though he lacked the hooves. I had been growing desperate for a response, Elias eventually said, folding his arms across his lap. We had hoped to contain the blight when we saw its first signs. We've been waiting for your arrival for so long. I'm afraid the situation has deteriorated. Elias reached into a vest pocket and drew out a weighty pouch of gold. He tossed it to Zeke, who caught it reflexively. Payment for your discretion, as promised. Zeke felt Nightingale tense on the couch beside him. Zeke cleared his throat in an attempt to recover from his surprise at the gift. We understand your situation is quite desperate. You could say so. Elias sunk into his seat, the color draining from his face. My wife, Rivka. God, I don't know. I'll explain, Father. The young man rested one arm on his father's shoulder. If you're certain you want to share it. Elias nodded. Yes, Damocles. Tell them. A blighted guardian penetrated the city's defenses. It slipped into the estate and attacked in the middle of the night, Damocles said. One of the gods fell before my mother arrived and destroyed it. He paused, glancing once in the direction where many of the guards were gathering. His words came slowly. Unfortunately, she was bitten in the fight. Everything seemed fine until... He struggled to continue. She was infected, Rook supplied. She's changing into one of them, isn't she? The group turned to look at Rook, happy that he knew what the blight was. Rook continued, seeing that his friends had no idea. The blight. It's supposed to be incurable. Once infected, an individual will slowly turn into an abomination. A cure hasn't been discovered. That doesn't mean there isn't one. Elias glared at them. I haven't called you here to tell me what I already know. Rook immediately went silent. No, of course not. Zeke kept his voice low, not making eye contact. Respectfully, he hoped. Then he took a chance and assumed that the real help was summoned without many details. Why are we here exactly? Elias raised an eyebrow and then spoke. You fought these creatures before. Princess Shalis of Alinea has told us that you are the experts on these creatures. Once an individual succumbs to the blight, they're mindless. I've heard they're as dumb as rocks. One of them couldn't sneak past city guards and through gates into the city at night. It would have attacked the first person it saw. There's no way it could have made its way up to the mansion by itself. I'm asking you to help discover how this happened. Zeke nodded with a blank expression. Right. Elias shared a look with his son, then explained further. We've investigated the grounds with no success so far. There was an incident just a few days before that might be connected. An explosion in the mines. We haven't had a fatal accident in 3 decades, and it comes only days before the blight attacks? He shook his head. No, it doesn't feel like a coincidence. Zeke bumped into Nightingale briefly with his knee under the table, meeting her eyes. She nodded, and he looked back to Elias. We'll investigate the explosion, Nightingale said as she stood. Is your wife? Elias rose as well, and his voice was like steel. Rivka is still alive. Her fate is no concern of yours. That is a family matter. You should be concerned that someone tried to assassinate me, the king's appointed duke. I have served Balthazar faithfully. I helped him explore these wildlands before this town even existed. I feel that I am owed some assistance. Of course you are, and you'll have it, Nightingale nodded confidently, though she was a little more subdued than usual. My son will accompany you into the mines. Elias put a hand on the man's back. He can grant you any sort of clearance you might require. Come with me. Damocles strode towards the door. We don't have time to waste.